So, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm good afternoon to all of you. My name is Eric Hui. I'm part of Equinix. We are a global data center provider. However, our difference is really the platform. And the platform is not just only a simple link to a provider or a cloud service provider. It is actually a platform to experience the service provider, the cloud provider. And Simon Hu actually yesterday talked about the edge and IoT. And this topic is actually a lot of people's minds on how you actually use more of internet and how do you actually experience more in internet and all the services that it can offer. So I'm going to basically talk about this, and this is much a sharing session. And I hope this amount of sharing can actually be potentially one of your insights when you make your decisions going forward. So I'm going to be talking about the edge. Now, there's a lot of difference of thinking what edge is. So let's start off some edge understanding. So edge, in a way, is the point within the network where you receive, you aggregate, or you distribute traffic. Okay, so the chart on the left-hand side actually shows that. Access points, yes, all of us know your mobile devices are access points. But the edge is actually where all that traffic is collected and distributed. Of course, and then behind the edge network is the core. So everyone's pretty much clear about the core. But the importance here is actually the edge is really evolving. Now, how is it evolving? There's a lot of trends that follows it. Now, from the cloud provider point of view, like in Alibaba's case as well, their services is now also distributed across the world. In that thinking, that's also building out their edges. So their edges are all in the different countries that's shown in this chart. Now, I know as Alibaba continues to expand, they are pushing more towards the edge and at more locations. That's the thinking. Now, as far as the models of deploying cloud, hybrid has been talked very widely, especially within enterprises. And hybrid itself also is a way of using more and investing more in edges. So this itself is also fueling how edges are evolving. And then the last part is really the applications that you see out there, especially very, very rich applications which requires data, which requires bandwidth, and requires processing power. So those three things, which is talked widely in the conference this year, AI, VR, and big data, all those are very intensive and heavy workloads, but they also require latency, very, very short latency, in order to get the quality of experience. So that's the thinking that edges will have to evolve as you move forward. Now, this is a chart actually shows the different kind of applications that actually is being classified between latency, which is on the x-axis in here, and also the criticality of the risk that involves if you're not basically meeting up latency. So you can see from the upper right-hand side, those are extremely latency sensitive, yet very critical workloads. So one of those things you can see there is the IoT side, especially with industrial side, is considered as very critical and also requires very, very low latency. As far as the IoT side, it's right now at the middle end of this. You can see data aggregation is right at the middle, while they're also building cloudlets, which is distribution points. That's actually also requires very, very low latency. Now, there's a little bit of key insight right there. The size of the bubble is showing basically the data volumes, not the market size. A lot of people get mistaken in that. But that gives you an idea that a lot of the usage is actually moving towards the right. That means the criticality and the latency is increasingly important as you move on with more and more cloud workloads. I give you almost, a lot of people ask about this, about latency and response, okay? I'll give you an analogy. It's just like when you call a customer service line. If you call them, you might be able to reach them very fast, but they are not responding to you yet. You may be on a call and you're waiting right at the phone line. But if you are having low latency, it's just like you're right there in front of the customer service agent and they have to serve you right away. So that analogy gives you the idea that you have to really looking at low latency and also yet fast and direct connections. Now from Alibaba's standpoint, this is actually a portfolio of what they have talked about last year, but this year is getting way broader. But you can see on the upper right-hand side, on the top side, which says IOV, which is the Internet of Vehicles, also the medical side, also the AI VR side, that actually has progressed quite a bit this year versus last year. And there has been a lot more use cases and POCs, proof of concepts, happening in the market. Now let's talk about the digital edge now. Okay, now we described what edge is. In Chinese, it's 边缘网络. But now, the digital edge actually means it's increasingly smart. And let's see how that works. This was how actually IoT was implemented before. The sensors on the left-hand side, basically it captures all the data points, all the pieces of data, which has to be uploaded in the cloud through a network. And you can see what are some of the things that's being done before in IoT. The traditional compute, the traditional storage, the traditional event processing is actually happening inside the core of the cloud. Whereas in the edge side, it's pretty much like a gateway. It is just an aggregation point. So IoT has always been like that versus the last 10 years. But now, we're seeing that the edge is increasingly smart, increasingly intelligent. And you can see in the green text right over there that there's a lot more things happening at the edge side. And it's very, very similar when Alibaba was pushing the edge locations, that there are a lot more capability happening at the edge. Some of the examples are right there, like listed as analytics, some of the filtering, some of the in-memory database storage. All this stuff is actually happening now at the edge. So what does that mean? If you're a user, if you're looking at building services which leverages cloud, you have to look more what the edge is helping you. So that is basically the thinking when Alibaba was talking about edges and Simon was talking about edges, is yes, that's where we are going to be looking at, and that we're going to be having more capability right at the edge. Now, this is another way of looking at this. If you're looking at an IoT side, the left side is where all the devices begin. And then the middle side, which says first level processing, this is where actually the first line of aggregation, that is the data is being collected, the data is going to be formatted, structured, and moved upstream. This is where the gateways are happening. And you can see a line here called data in motion. Now, the second level processing is actually where you actually hits the cloud, is where you're going to see a lot of different compute power and the storage power capabilities happening right over there, because it might involve a lot of different kind of servers, storage, and in-memory stuff during the works, and including something called workflow orchestration. And then once that's done, once that compute's done, once that storage is done, then it's the presentation and action point of view. So if you look at this kind of chart in here, where is the digital edge? The digital edge is actually happening right there. Okay? Where all the smart and intelligent stuff is happening when there are multiple data sources, and at the same time, multiple levels of touch point, and also the orchestration, and also the part of handing off the different kind of providers. It's happening right there. And that's what we're talking about now. Edge being more smart, edge treating more digital, and edge becoming more important. So this is where we're going to be seeing a lot more investments, a lot more interesting developments in the market about that. Now I'm going to give you some examples of how some of these deployments happening in IoT leveraging the digital edge. It's already happened over the last year. And we have been seeing it also within Equinix. First thing, taxis. So all of us get problems getting over to the venue here because there's a lot of people traffic coming here, but limited supply of taxis. So there's a case where GPS, Wi-Fi, and also 4G is involved that actually maps where all the taxis are, and yet they also have produced a heat map. The heat map shows that if it is more red, that means you're going to see less taxis, more traffic, and potentially, if you want to get a taxi, you probably have to do a multiplier. Now, I know in China this is no longer the case. They don't probably not allow it. But there are also multipliers. If you want to give more money to the taxi driver, they might only be able to serve you. So this is one of the cases. All this traffic actually is captured at the edge, processed at the edge, rather than taking to the core, because it's faster response. Because people demand faster response in this kind of an architecture, in this kind of a use case. The other one is smart metering. In this case of a smart metering, used to be that a lot of the utility companies have to go out and hire people to go and take all the metering by hand. But now, all these smart meters are basically just sending upstream traffic to a location where it actually is the edge, and in this case, it's within our data center facility, using mobile internet. And then the utility company can generate all these kind of bills through different kind of ERP systems. And in this ERP system, in this case, it's SAP. And then once these bills are generated, if there are any customer service calls, it uses the cloud to do all these accesses. So this is another case where we're seeing that the edge is taking a very, very important role in automation and also in increasing efficiency of the field workers. Now the third case, connected car and also telematics. So telematics is actually something which is related to insurance companies, car insurance companies, that they want to get that data to analyze the driver behavior so that they can give you the appropriate premium level. So in this case, where all the usage and the driving patterns of the driver and also the car locations as well is being analyzed, going through a edge location, processed and passed information to the different insurance providers. So this is also a case we have seen happening very, very progressively over the last year. And then the last one is a IoT platform provider. This is actually an industrial IoT platform provider, which in this case, they built two edges. One edge is internal facing, that is, they serve their own IT. But the other edge is to serve external customers. So they try to put two edges together and put all these feature and guardrails together to link those edges together so that they can serve these industrial companies, manufacturing companies much better. So in these four cases, it is really exhibiting one thing. Edges are increasingly important for architectures, for using cloud, and also in terms of distribution and connecting. So it shows you that there will be more and more use cases, and I've seen some interesting cases here in the show as well, that makes the edge something really in the highlight in the future. So what about how do you do this with Alibaba, Ali Cloud? So right now, from an IoT standpoint, there's increasing amount of ways to access things. Okay, things means IoT, the T, it's things. So there are a couple of these things listed in here, but there is something also much more categorically more interesting is there's something called narrowband IoT that Huawei and Ericsson, these companies joined forces and actually rolled it out in China with China Telecom and also with China Mobile. And there's also other technologies called LoRa, which is also a low power kind of a connection technology. And then there's also the traditional 4G and the coming 5G, 3GPP kind of standards coming out for accessing. So these will continue to evolve. But from the platform point of view, once that data is being captured, then it has to go through some sort of a data center in order to get into the cloud platform. So the reason that you're thinking, if you're an enterprise user, that you want to be in the data center, the reason is because then you can basically leverage different kind of connection technologies to get to the cloud provider. Now, there are direct ways of connecting to the cloud provider by bypassing internet, okay? Think of it that there is a private connection that you can make between here directly to Ali Cloud platform. You can do that too. That's a private connection, okay? Think of it as, just like I used the example before, rather than just calling the customer service agent, you have the customer service agent right next to you. So that's a direct connectivity. And then there's also other traditional ways of doing so. Now, you may use different network providers while doing this endeavor. This is really your choice. And that's the reason that you will be interested in looking into a platform like that to make it a efficient and very interesting kind of a connectivity model. Now, as I said, Equinix itself is a data center company. We have been 19 years this year, okay? So we're just 1 year older than Alibaba. But our success also is tracking very close to what Alibaba is seeing in the world too. We started just with a few metros, but now we have over 180 data centers all across the world, okay? So we're glad that Johnny was talking about us before in his AT&T speech. You know, pretty much all the network providers are using us because they are actually cross-connecting and peering at our locations. Unofficially, we know we're pretty much the backbone of internet as far as the peering connections. So you can see how it works. And as in the world increasingly digital, this is an important footprint. And then we're here in an international platform, the international conference here. If you're thinking outside of China, you want to basically look in a provider which gives you that density, gives you that choices as you move on. So this is where our footprint is. Now, one thing that really distinguishes ourselves with a lot of local data center providers is this word interconnection, okay? So in the middle in here, it tells you and it shows you that there's a linkage in between different kind of ecosystems that you can have a direct connection to them. And you can see all these 5 different major categories gives you unlimited interconnection possibilities. It can be network to content. It can be financials to cloud computing. In this case, you can think about is and financial and with cloud computing. So a lot of possibilities exist. And that's the beauty of a dense interconnection platform that we have. Now, over the last 20 years, 30 years, the internet has evolved. But let's take a quick look at history, how this actually reviewed over the last 20, 30 years. In the 80s, it was the computing era. A lot of the technology advances were focused on increasing compute power. So you can see a lot of these histories related to IBM PCs and the mainframes and all that during that time. So that was the computing era. And then it becomes the networked era, where PC NIC cards, network interface cards, has started to evolve. And then computers cannot be standalone. It becomes that you have to connect to something, you have to network to something in order to enhance the value of computing. So a lot of and during the 90s, a lot of new companies emerged, eBay, Yahoo, all these companies, Cisco were doing all the switching and routing. This is where the era of network came. Now, with network then becomes connectivity, the connected era. So a lot of e-commerce companies popped up because network era have started. So a lot of these companies are basically serving point to point, 1 point to 1 point for their customers. And that was at that time is connected era. So Facebook was basically also born in the connected era at that time. But now, in this age, with mobile internet and mobility so pervasive, you're going to be in a case called interconnected era. That is, think of it as if you want to do one service, if you want to go buy something from the internet, it's not just going to be one provider. You have to go through a mobile carrier. The mobile carrier goes to an e-commerce provider and goes to a payment gateway and then goes to a logistics company for tracking. All these information has to be interconnected in order to make it work, in order to serve world problems, in order to be better the way that we live. So that is the era that we will be tracking for the next 5, 10, 20 years, is the interconnected era. So with that said, that's the reason that interconnectivity and interconnection is so important as we move on. So with that said, there's a couple of takeaways that I want to give you. First thing, be on the edge. In this word, the word edge is be on the lookout. There's a lot of developments happening in this conference and also in the world around us. Be on the lookout. Models will change. Build your edge. That is, when you think about an application, when you think about an infrastructure investment, think more on where do you want to put it. Put it in the edge. Where is the edge? Think of a location which basically gives you options, gives you diversity, so that you can be moving around and also be flexible. Cloud model is a flexible model. So you can hear it from Alibaba also this time is they start to build the virtual machines in seconds. That is a paradigm change. So be on the lookout and build your edge. And the last thing is, I hope you edge forward. That means you move forward and prosper with Equinix. With that said, thank you for the opportunity. We're very glad to be a partner with Alibaba. And we're going to be hoping that more of you use more internet and you look more into edge investments. Thank you.